The beautiful thing is, it doesn't have to be your own money. And when you register for my free class, I'm gonna immediately send you a free digital copy of my Money Resource Guide, which reveals what the 7 sources are that you can use to invest in real estate without using your own money.
We got a house under contract that was flipped. we got that seller to own and finance us the house. We got to see the processes work. We got to see the systems that work. And when we sold it, we made $25,000.
Not only have I helped
Ain't saying nothing, yeah.
I've also helped them get started financially. In fact, in just the past few years alone, my business partners and I have funded over $165 million in real estate
You was
projects,
asking me questions?
making it possible.
Or you was getting ready to get radical on me?
Get started.
When I went to Pence event, it was just this whole door
them guys
that
over there
opened up.
chilling out.
It was eye-opening. I realized I
need something to
can
drink.
do more than what I think I can.
President Trump and I took office.
The only one that's holding me back is really me. Soon enough, we got our first deal under
Biden's vice
contract.
president.
I did that deal, and it felt great. I was like, not believe that I did
President
this.
Trump
Like,
cut
that's
taxes
awesome. I need to do it again. Throughout
what
the summer, we
Senator
had like
Harris says.
6, 7 deals
The average
going on.
American
My
family of four
confidence
had
level
$2,000
went
to save.
through the roof. At that point, it was just
with the
deal
rise in
after
wages
deal
that
after
occurred,
deal after
most
deal.
predominantly for
Imagine having
blue-collar,
properties
hardworking Americans.
that produce a
The average
consistent
household
monthly
income
cash
for a family of
flow
four
and increase your net worth, whether you're working or
President
not.
Trump's tax cuts.
At the class, you'll
In
learn how to
America,
buy
you just heard
properties at a
Senator Harris
discount.
tell you.
So the day
On
you
day
close,
one,
you have instant
Joe
equity.
Biden's gonna raise
You're
your
also going to learn how to utilize
It's
other
really
people's
remarkable
money
to think.
to buy the property.
I mean, right
On top
after
of that, the
time
tenant
where we're going
is the one
through a
paying down the
pandemic.
loan.
It got me
22
excited. It got me
million.
motivated. It showed me that I can do this.
Already
I
added
never knew
$11.6
there were so many
million
ways to invest in real
because we had a
estate
president
without
who cut
using
taxes,
our own
rolled
money.
back
Over the past
regulations,
14
unleashed
years, I've done hundreds of real estate deals. I've made money in both
secured
up
$4
and down
trillion
markets
for
because the
Congress to
systems I created
give direct
allow me to
payments to
get
families,
predictable
save
results.
50 million jobs
At the
for
event,
paycheck.
you'll learn how to fix and flip properties just like we do on our TV show. For example, this is one of the 29 properties I'm working on right now. However, it's not as easy as it looks on TV, which is why we share both what works and what doesn't work,
You literally
and why
have
it's
spared
so
no expense to
important
help
to
the
follow a
American people and
system.
the American
Since I've attended that event,
Biden
my
and
real estate
Harris
career has
wanna
just
raise
absolutely
taxes. They wanna
skyrocketed.
bury
I am
our
now on
economy
deal
in a $2
9 and 10
trillion
of
Green New
rehabbing.
Deal,
I am
which you were one of the
making
original
money.
co-sponsors of in the United States Senate. They want to abolish fossil fuels and ban fracking, which would cost hundreds of thousands of American jobs all across the heartland. And Joe Biden wants to go back to the economic surrender to China, that when we took office, half of our international trade deficit was with China alone. And Joe Biden wants to repeal all of the tariffs that President Trump put into effect to fight for American jobs and American workers. Joe Biden says democracy's on the ballot. Make no mistake about it, Susan. The American economy, the American comeback is on the ballot with 4 more years of growth
Thank you.
and opportunity,
Thank you,
4
Vice
more years of President Donald Trump. 2021
Thank
is
you,
going to
Vice
be the
President
biggest
Pence.
economic year in the history of this country.
Thank you, Vice President Pence. Senator Harris.
Well, I mean, I thought we saw enough of it in last week's debate, but I think this is supposed to be a debate based on fact and truth. And the truth and the fact is, Joe Biden has been very clear. He will not raise taxes on anybody who makes less than $400,000
He said he's
a
going
year.
to repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
Well, it'd
I'm speaking.
be important if you said the truth. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. That was tax cuts that gave the average working family $2,000 in a tax break every single year. Senator,
that is
that's the math.
absolutely not true. That
Is he
tax
only
bill-
cutting? Is he only going to repeal part of the Trump tax cuts?
If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then
Please.
have a conversation, okay?
Please.
Okay. Joe Biden will not raise taxes on anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. He has been very clear about that. Joe Biden will not end fracking. He has been very clear about that. Joe Biden is the one who, during the Great Recession, was responsible for the Recovery Act that brought America back. And now the Trump-Pence administration wants to take credit when they rode the coattails of Joe Biden's success for the economy that they had at the beginning of their term. Of course, now the economy is a complete disaster. But Joe Biden, on the one hand, did that. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who has reigned over a recession that is being compared to the Great Depression, On the one hand, you have Joe Biden, who was responsible with President Barack Obama for the Affordable Care Act, which brought health care to over 20 million Americans and protected people with pre-existing conditions. And what it also did is it saved those families who otherwise were going bankrupt because of hospital bills they could not afford. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who's in court right now, trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which means that you will lose protections if you have pre-existing conditions. And this is very important, Susan.
Yes,
and it's
but
important.
we need to give Vice President.
I'd just like to, he interrupted me, and I'd like to just finish, please. If you have a pre-existing condition, heart disease, diabetes, breast cancer, they're coming for you. If you love someone who has a pre-existing condition, they're coming for you. If you are under the age of 26 on your parents' coverage, they're coming for you.
Senator Harris, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me give you a chance to respond.
Well, I hope we have a chance to talk about health care because Obamacare was a disaster. The American people remember it well. President Trump and I have a plan to improve health care and to protect pre-existing conditions for every American. But look, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. You yourself said on multiple occasions when you were running for president that you would ban fracking. Joe Biden looked at a supporter in the eye and pointed and said, I guarantee that we will abolish fossil fuels. They have a $2 trillion version of the Green New Deal, Susan, that your newspaper, USA Today, said really wasn't that very different from the original Green New Deal. More taxes, more regulation, banning fracking, abolishing fossil fuel, crushing American energy, and economic surrender to China is a prescription for economic decline. President Trump and I will keep America growing. The V-shaped recovery that's underway right now will continue with 4 more years of President Donald Trump.
Thank you very, very much, Vice President Pence. Once again, you've provided the perfect segue to a new topic, which is climate change. And Vice President Pence, I'd like to pose the first question to you. This year, we've seen record-setting hurricanes in the South. Another one, Hurricane Delta, is now threatening the Gulf. And we have seen record-setting wildfires in the West. Do you believe, as the scientific community has concluded, that man-made climate change has made wildfires bigger, hotter, and more deadly, and have made hurricanes wetter, slower, and more damaging? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you, Susan. Well, first, I'm very proud of our record on the environment and on conservation. According to all of the best estimates, our air and land are cleaner than any time ever recorded, and our water is among the cleanest in the world. And just a little while ago, the President signed the Outdoors Act. It's the largest investment in our public lands and public parks in 100 years.
That's true.
So President Trump has made a commitment to conservation.
Stick the audio into
now, with regard to climate change, the climate is changing. But the issue is, what's the cause and what do we do about it? President Trump has made it clear that we're going to continue to listen to the science. Now, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris would put us back in the Paris Climate Accord. They'd impose the Green New Deal, which would crush American energy, would increase the energy costs of American families in their homes, and literally would crush American jobs. And President Trump and I believe that the progress that we have made in a cleaner environment has been happening precisely
Trump
because
administration,
we have a strong free market
Mr. Pence,
economy.
Vice President.
You know what's remarkable is the United States has reduced CO2 more than the countries that are still in the Paris Climate Accord, but we've done it through innovation.
Excuse the late start
and
on the commentary here, but
and fracking.
We still have to
which,
talk
Senator,
over
the American
Mr.
people can go look at the record.
These debating.
I know Joe Biden says otherwise now, as you do, but the both of you repeatedly committed to abolishing fossil fuel and fracking. And so by creating the kind of American innovation, we're actually steering toward a stronger and better environment. With regard to wildfires, President Trump and I believe that forest management has to be front and center, and even Governor Gavin Newsom from your state has agreed we've got to work on forest management. And with regard to hurricanes, the National Oceanic Administration tells us that actually as difficult as they are,
Thank you, Vice President.
there are no more hurricanes today than there were 100 years ago.
Thank you.
But many of the climate alarmists
President Pence,
use
I'm sorry, your time
hurricanes
is up.
and wildfires
Yeah, my
to try
God.
and
Thank
sell
you,
their
Vice
bill of
President.
goods with the Green New
They
Deal.
have the
And
concealment
President Trump
kind of
America always
covered
put
there.
American
It's,
jobs and
President
American
Pence.
workers first.
you really
Senator
can't
Harris,
tell that they
as
have
the
a
Vice President mentioned, you
barricade.
co-sponsored the Green New Deal in Congress.
Vice
But Vice
President
President
there
Biden
was
said in
going
last
on
week's
with
debate that he does not
the
support
climate
the Green New
change
Deal.
issue extended.
But if you look at the Biden-Harris campaign website, it describes the Green New Deal as a crucial framework. What
Republican
exactly
Party
would be the
really
stance
into
of a
the green
Biden-Harris
thing.
administration toward the Green New Deal? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Sure. So, first of all, I will repeat, and the American people know, that Joe Biden will not
It's a
ban
definite
fracking.
Democratic
That is a fact.
issue.
That is a fact.
Even when,
I will
there's no
repeat
climate,
that Joe Biden
proven
has been very
climate
clear
change
that he
or
thinks
climate
about
problem.
growing jobs, which is why he will not increase
It's
taxes
still
for
gonna take
anyone
it
who
up
makes
because,
less
you
than
know,
$400,000 a year.
we had show
Joe Biden's economic
pollute
plan,
the ocean, the
Moody's,
water.
which is a reputable Wall Street
Use
firm,
exactly
has said will create 7 million more jobs
exhaustive
than
amount
Donald
of
Trump's.
energy
And
to
part
do
of those
whatever we
jobs that will
need
be
to do.
created by Joe Biden are going to be about clean energy and renewable energy. Because you see, Joe understands that the west coast of our country is burning, including my home state of California. Joe sees what is happening on the Gulf states, which are being battered by storms. Joe has seen and talked with the farmers in Iowa, whose entire crops have been destroyed because of floods. And so Joe believes, again, in science. I'll tell you something, Susan. I served, when I first got to the Senate, on the committee that's responsible for the environment. Do you know this administration took the word science off the website and then took the phrase climate change off the website? We have seen a pattern with this administration, which is they don't believe in science. And Joe's plan is about saying we're going to deal with it, but we're also going to create jobs. Donald Trump, when asked about the wildfires in California, and the question was, you know, the science is
respond on this issue here.
Science doesn't know. So let's talk about who is prepared to lead
science
our
is
country
accumulation
over the course of the next 4 years on what is an existential threat to us as human beings. Joe is about saying we're going to invest that in renewable energy, which is going to be about the creation of millions of jobs. We will achieve net zero emissions by 2050, carbon neutral by 2035. Joe has a plan. This has been a lot of talk from the Trump administration, and really it has been to go backward instead of forward. We will also re-enter the climate agreement with pride.
Senator Harris just said that climate change is an existential threat. Vice President Pence, do you believe that climate change poses an existential threat?
This is a question. Yes
As
or
I said,
no?
Susan, the climate is changing. We'll follow the science. But once again, Senator Harris
in the road followed by many
is denying the fact that they're going to raise taxes.
Deny
every
it
American.
because
Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that
People
on day
grow
one
old.
he was going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. Those tax cuts delivered $2,000 in tax relief to the average family of 4 across America. With regard to banning fracking, I just recommend that people look at the record. You yourself said repeatedly that you would ban fracking. You were the first Senate co-sponsor of the Green New Deal. And while Joe Biden denied the Green New Deal, Susan, thank you for pointing out, the Green New Deal is on their campaign website.
I don't know if you're going to get no
and as USA Today
entertainment.
said, it's essentially the same plan as you co-sponsored
Amount
with
out of
AOC when she
these
submitted
guys
it in the
pretty
Senate.
serious, you know.
And you just heard the senator say that she's going to resubmit
become
America to the
number
Paris
one.
Accord. Look,
So
the American people have
serious
always
and
cherished our environment. We'll continue to cherish it. We've made great progress reducing CO2 emissions through American innovation and the development of natural gas through fracking. We don't need a massive $2 trillion Green New Deal that would impose all new mandates on American businesses and American families.
Thank you.
Joe Biden wants us to retrofit 4 million
my guy,
business
Mr.
buildings.
Spence, him serious
It makes
himself
no sense.
too.
It will cost jobs. President
Real
Trump
serious.
Thank you,
is going
Vice
to put
President.
America
Even when him
first.
look
He's
as
going to put
calm and
jobs first.
relaxing.
We're going to take care of our environment and follow the science.
Thank
But
you, Vice
you know,
President
on
Pence.
the issue of jobs,
Senator Harris.
let's talk about that. The vice president earlier referred to, as part of what he thinks is an accomplishment, the president's trade war with China. You lost that trade war. You lost it.
Serious.
What ended up happening is because of a so-called trade war with China, America lost 300,000 manufacturing jobs. Farmers have experienced bankruptcy because of it. We are in a manufacturing recession because of it. And when we look at where this administration has been, there are estimates that by the end of the term of this administration, they will have lost more jobs than almost any other presidential administration. And the American people know what I'm talking about. You know, I think about 20-year-olds. You know,
Did that. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who has reigned over.
Coming out of high school.
They're
and
coming
college
for
right
you.
now, and
Senator
they're
Harris,
wondering,
thank you.
Is there
Let me
a
get
job there for me?
China,
We're looking at people
which
who
would
are
crush
trying to
American
figure out
energy, would
how they're
increase the
gonna
energy
pay
costs of
rent by the
American
It's odd to,
families
to-
in their homes.
Renters are worried about whether they're going to be able to pay rent by the end of the month. This is where the economy is in America right now, and it is because of the catastrophe and the failure of leadership of this administration.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, let me give you just 15 seconds to respond, because then I want to move on to
Well, I'd love to respond. Look, lost the trade war with China. Joe Biden never fought it. Joe Biden has been a cheerleader for communist China through over the last several decades. And again, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts. When Joe Biden was vice president, we lost 200,000 manufacturing jobs, and President Obama said they were never coming back. He said we need a
look like
magic
them
wand
then
to
at
bring
school,
them back.
eh?
In our first 3 years after we cut
Thank
taxes,
you, Vice
rolled back
President.
regulation, unleashed
Sit on
American
one
energy,
them blank
this
desk.
administration saw 500,000
Thank you, Vice
manufacturing
President
jobs
Pence.
created. And that's exactly the kind of growth we're going to continue to see as we bring our nation through
Thank you, Vice
this
President
pandemic.
Pence.
But a
Mr.
Green New
Thank you,
Deal, your
Vice President
massive new
Pence.
mandates, your Paris Climate Accord, it's going to kill jobs this time, just like it killed jobs.
I'd like
Susan,
to-
I just need to respond very briefly.
15
please.
seconds, and
Thank
then
you.
we'll move
Thank
on.
you. Joe Biden is responsible for saving America's auto industry, and you voted against it. So let's set the record straight. Thank you.
I'd like to talk about China. We have, as our next topic, we have no more complicated or consequential foreign relationship than the one with China. It is a huge market for American agricultural goods. It's a potential partner in dealing with climate change in North Korea. And in a video tonight, President Trump again blamed it for the coronavirus, saying China will pay. Vice President Pence, how would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Competitors, adversaries, enemies? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Susan. Well, before I leave that, let me speak to voting records if I can. You know, everybody knows that NAFTA cost literally thousands of American factories to close. We saw automotive jobs go south of the border. President Trump fought to renegotiate NAFTA. And the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement is now the law of the land. American people deserve to know Senator Kamala Harris was one of only 10 members of the Senate to vote against the USMCA. It was a huge win for American auto workers. It was a huge win for American farmers, especially dairy in the upper Midwest. But Senator, you said it didn't go far enough on climate change, that you put your radical environmental agenda ahead of American auto workers and ahead of American jobs. The American people deserve to know that. It's probably why Newsweek magazine said that Kamala Harris was the most liberal member of the United States Senate in 2019. More liberal than Bernie Sanders, more liberal than any of the others in the United States Senate. So now with regard to China, look, Susan, first and foremost, China is to blame for the coronavirus. And President Trump is not happy about it. He's made that very clear, made it clear again today. China and the World Health Organization did not play straight with the American people. They did not let our personnel into China to get information on the coronavirus until the middle of February. Fortunately, President Trump, in dealing with China from the outset of this administration, standing up to China that had been taking advantage of America for decades in the wake of Joe Biden's cheerleading for China, President Trump made that decision before the end of January to suspend all travel from China. And again, the American people deserve to know Joe Biden opposed President Trump's decision to suspend all travel from China. He said it was hysterical. He said it
Thank
was
you, Vice President
xenophobic.
Pence.
But President Trump has
Vice President
stood
Pence,
up
your
to
time is
China.
up.
We're going to continue to stand strong.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
We want to improve the relationship, but we're going to level the playing field, and we're going to hold
Vice President
China
Pence.
accountable for what they did to America with the coronavirus.
Thank you. Senator Harris, let me ask you the same question that I asked the Vice President. How would you describe our fundamental relationship with China? Are we competitors, adversaries, enemies? You'll have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Susan, the Trump administration's perspective and approach to China has resulted in the loss of American lives, American jobs, and America's standing. There's a weird obsession that President Trump has had with getting rid of whatever accomplishment was achieved by President Obama and Vice President Biden. For example, they created within the White House an office that basically was responsible for monitoring pandemics. They got rid of it.
Not true.
There was a team of disease experts that President Obama and Vice President Biden dispatched to China to monitor what is now predictable and what might happen. They pulled them out. We now are looking at 210,000 Americans who have lost their lives. Let's look at the job situation. We mentioned before the trade deal, the trade war, they wanted to call it, with China. It resulted in the loss of over 300 manufacturing jobs and a manufacturing recession, and the American consumer paying thousands of dollars more for goods because of that failed war that they called it. Then let's talk about standing. Pew, a reputable research firm, has done an analysis that shows that leaders of all of our formerly allied countries have now decided that they hold in greater esteem and respect Xi Jinping, the head of the Chinese Communist Party, than they do Donald Trump, the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief of the United States. This is where we are today because of a failure of leadership by this administration.
Senator Harris, we've seen changes in the role of the United States in terms of global leadership over the past 4 years. And of course, times do change. What's your definition? We've seen strains with China, of course, as the Vice President mentioned. We've seen strains with our traditional allies in NATO and elsewhere. What is your definition of the role of American leadership in 2020?
So, you know, Joe is, I love talking with Joe about a lot of these issues. And, you know, Joe, I think he said it quite well. He says, you know, foreign policy, it might sound complicated, but really it's relationships. So just think about it as relationships. And so we know this in our personal and professional relationships. You got to keep your word to your friends. Got to be loyal to your friends. People who've stood with you, got to stand with them. You got to know who your adversaries are and keep them in check. But what we have seen with Donald Trump is that he has betrayed our friends and embraced dictators around the world. Let's take, for example, Russia. So, Russia, I serve on the Intelligence Committee of the United States Senate. America's intelligence community told us Russia interfered in the election of the President of the United States in 2016 and is playing in 2020. Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, said the same. But Donald Trump, the Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America, prefers to take the word of Vladimir Putin over the word of the American intelligence community. You look at our friends at NATO. He has walked away from agreements. You can look at the Iran nuclear deal, which now has put us in a position where we are less safe because they are building up what might end up being a significant nuclear arsenal. We were in that deal, guys. We were in the Iran nuclear deal with friends, with allies around the country. And because of Donald Trump's unilateral approach to foreign policy, coupled with his isolationism, he pulled us out and has made America less safe. So, Susan, it's about relationships. And the thing that has always been part of the strength of our nation, in addition to our great military, has been that we keep our word. But Donald Trump doesn't understand that because he doesn't understand what it means to be honest.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, let me give you a chance to respond.
Well, thank you. Well, President Trump kept his word when we moved the American embassy to Jerusalem, the capital of the state of Israel. When Joe Biden was vice president, they promised to do that, and they never did. We've stood strong with our allies, but we've been demanding. NATO is now contributing more to our common defense than ever before, thanks to President Trump's leadership. We've strengthened our alliances across the Asia-Pacific, and we've stood strong against those who would do us harm. You know, when President Trump came into office,
wrap this up in a little
ISIS
bit.
had captured an
Sound
area
like him coming
of the Middle East the size
concluding
of Pennsylvania.
vice law.
But President Trump unleashed the American military,
experience
and our
in
armed
giving
forces
speech.
destroyed the ISIS caliphate
Well, do
and took
another
down
10
their
minutes
leader
and see
al-Baghdadi without one American casualty.
how it goes.
Al-Baghdadi was responsible for the death of thousands. But notably, America's hearts today are with the family of Kayla Mueller, the parents of which are here with us tonight in Salt Lake City. Today, 2 of the ISIS killers responsible for Kayla Mueller's murder were brought to justice in the United States. Jihadi John was killed on the battlefield along with the other beetle. The reality is that when Joe Biden was vice president, we had an opportunity.
True story or not, I
Save
don't really know. There's a
breaks my
side
heart to
note
reflect
on
on
an
it, but the
explanation.
military came into the Oval Office, presented a plan. They said they knew where Kayla was. Baghdadi had held her for 18 months, abused her mercilessly before they killed her. But when Joe Biden was vice president, they hesitated for a month. And when armed forces finally went in, it was clear she'd been moved 2 days earlier. And her family says with a heart that broke the heart of every American that if President Donald Trump had been president, they believe Kayla would be alive today.
Thank you, Vice
Look,
President.
we destroyed the ISIS caliphate. And you talk about re-entering the Iran nuclear deal. I mean, the last administration transferred $1.8 billion to the leading state sponsor
Thank you, Vice
of
President
terrorism.
Pence.
President Donald Trump got us out of the deal.
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
And when Qasem Soleimani was traveling to Baghdad
Thank you,
to do
Vice President
harm
Pence.
to Americans, President Donald Trump took
Thank you,
him
Vice
out.
President Pence.
And America is safer, our allies are safer, and the American people know President Donald Trump will never have
Thank you, Vice President
take
Pence.
action.
I would like to give Senator Harris a chance to respond, but not at such great length because, of course, there are other topics we want to talk about.
But I would like equal time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
First of all, to the Mueller family, I know about your daughter's case, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. What happened to her is awful.
Little stern sympathy.
And it should have never happened. And I know Joe feels the same way. And I know that President Obama feels the same way.
Explain the non-verbal cue.
But you mentioned Soleimani.
Yeah,
Let's start there.
wisdom, man.
So after the strike on Soleimani, there was a counter strike on our troops in Iraq.
A little more alter in our voice and maybe an effort to cry would
they
probably
suffered serious brain injuries.
appear a
And you know
little
what
bit
Donald
more
Trump dismissed
authentic,
them as?
but
Headaches.
hey,
And this is
when you're
about a
wearing a
pattern of
pearl
Donald Trump's,
around your neck,
where he has referred
American
to our men who are
lapel
serving
pin.
in our military as suckers
you have to
and
kind of
losers.
uphold to a different
Donald
tradition.
Trump,
So
who went to Arlington Cemetery and stood above the graves of our fallen
you have a
heroes
lot of ancestors
and said,
and so
what's in
forth,
it for
but
them? Because of
We got
course,
a
you know, he
jewelry,
only thinks
got
about
a
what's in
ring,
it for him. Let's take
bracelets,
what he said about
plenty
John
earring.
McCain, a great American
ring on
hero.
both side fingers and rather.
And Donald Trump says
Left and
he
right.
doesn't deserve to be called a hero because he was a prisoner of war. And this is very important when you want to talk about who is the current commander-in-chief and what they care about and what they don't care about. Public reporting that Russia had bounties on the heads of American soldiers. And you know what a bounty is? It's somebody puts a price on your head and they will pay it if you are killed. And Donald Trump had talked at least 6 times to Vladimir Putin and never brought up the subject. Joe
That-
Biden would
that,
never do that.
That gonna
Joe
be a little
Biden
bit
would-
emotional.
Joe Biden
Whatever the story
would hold
is,
Russia
it's
to
gonna be a
account
little bit
for
emotional.
any
So
threat
there you have
to
it. You
our
can
nation's
hear it a
security
little
or
bit.
to
The
our
passion
troops
in our
who are
eyes.
sacrificing their lives for the sake of our democracy and our safety.
Thank you, Senator Harris. This is
Yeah,
such an
everybody
important
can
issue,
sit
but we
down
have
and
other
talk.
important issues as well. And
Susan,
I want to make
respond.
sure we have a chance
The
to
strength of a
talk about
broadcast
I'm-
is giving it
She has 15
orientation
seconds
and
because
I gotta
standing
have
trying to
more
keep.
than that. Look.
Well, I'm sorry,
Modern
Vice
or
President,
just-
you've had more time than she's had.
and
So far.
Slanders against
that show the
President
definition
Donald
of
Trump
laziness
regarding
and at the
men
same
and women
time
in
an
our armed
effort
forces
to
are
kind of
absurd.
I'm sorry, Vice
My
President
son is
Pence.
a captain in the
progress.
United States Marine Corps. My son-in-law is deployed in the United States Navy. I can assure all of you, with sons and daughters serving in our military, President Donald Trump not
Yeah,
only
Mr.
respects but
Mr.
reveres
Spence in a
all of
very
those who serve in our
diplomatic
armed forces, and any suggestion otherwise
voice.
is ridiculous.
Thank
Let
you,
me
Vice
say
President
that
Pence.
the
Vice
American
President
people
Pence,
deserve,
you know,
Susan,
Vice
the
President
American
Pence,
people
I
deserve to
didn't,
know.
Vice President Pence, I did not, excuse me,
Susan, the
I did
American
not
people
create
deserve
the
to know
rules for tonight.
Joe Biden.
Your
and Trump-
campaigns agreed to the rules for tonight's
I-
debate with the Commission on Presidential Debates. I'm here to enforce them, which involves moving from one topic to another, giving roughly equal time to both of
Go
you,
right ahead.
which is what I'm trying very hard to
Go
do.
right ahead.
laying
So I
down
want
the
to go
law.
ahead and move to the next topic, which is an important one, as the last
Moderator,
topic was,
she trying
and that
to
is
do
the
it.
Supreme Court.
Trying to
On Monday, the Senate Judiciary Committee is scheduled to open hearings
Really
on
can't
Amy
cover all the
Coney Barrett's
topics,
nomination to the
but
Supreme Court. Senator Harris,
she's trying to
you'll
make
be there
doing
as a
her
member
best
of the committee.
effort.
Her confirmation would cement the court's conservative majority and make it likely
forget
open
that's
to more
more- at
abortion
least the hot
restrictions,
topic
even to
on the-
overturning the landmark
The
Roe
one,
v. Wade
the
ruling.
corner,
Access to abortion would then
the
be
one
up to
that
the states.
formed the foundation of
Vice President Pence,
society.
you're the former
so,
governor of Indiana. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want Indiana to do? Would you want
Yeah,
your
this
home
is
state
not a Roe
to
v. Wade.
ban
This is a
all
constant
abortions? You have
theme
2 minutes, uninterrupted.
within
Well, thank you for the question, but I'll use a little bit of my time
American
to respond to
society.
a very important issue before. The American people deserve to know Qasem Soleimani, the Iranian general, was responsible for the death of hundreds of American service members. When the opportunity came, we saw him headed to Baghdad to kill more Americans. President Trump didn't hesitate, and Qasem Soleimani is gone. But you deserve to know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris actually criticized the decision to take out Qasem Soleimani. It's really inexplicable, but with regard to Joe Biden,
Yeah, woman, I got
explainable.
definitely.
Because history records that Joe Biden actually opposed the raid against Osama bin
I
Laden.
mean, I'm honored too
It's
if he close to
absolutely
his
essential
father and he don't
that
want
we
to
have a
see.
commander-in-chief
Kind of
who will
hard to
not
say a man
hesitate
is
to
a
act to
man.
protect American
Matter where
lives
in
and to
life,
protect
yeah,
American service
especially
members, and that's what you have in President
maybe
Donald
with
Trump.
the constant
Now, with
reminder of a
regard
modern
to the
life.
Supreme Court of the United States, let me say President Trump and I could not be
with
more enthusiastic
hesitation, that's probably
about the
understandable.
opportunity to see Judge Amy Coney Barrett become Justice Amy
So
Coney
yeah,
Barrett.
you have to really be passionate
She's a
about your
brilliant woman.
country, you know.
And she will bring a
At any
lifetime of
cause, you have
experience
to be
and a
uphold
sizable
just
American
in
family.
matter, in a matter
the Supreme
the
Court of the
enemy, as
United
long as
States.
it's an enemy against
And our
the
hope
country.
is in the
you
hearing
have
next
to
week, unlike
take the
Justice
stand
Kavanaugh
up
received
for your
with
country.
treatment from you and others, we hope she gets a fair hearing. And we particularly hope that we don't see the kind of attacks on her Christian faith that we saw before. I mean, the Democrat chairman of the Judiciary Committee before, when Judge Barrett was being
Yeah, Mr.
confirmed
Spence
for the Court
himself
of
is a
Appeals,
pastor, I know.
expressed concern that
Old
the
Baptist
dogma
pastor.
of her faith lived loudly in her. Dick Durbin of Illinois said that it was a concern. Senator, I know one of our judicial nominees you actually attacked because they were a member of the Catholic Knights of Columbus, just because the Knights of Columbus holds pro-life views. And
Thank you,
pro-marriage.
President
So
Pence. Your
my
time
hope
is
is
up.
that when the hearing takes place, that
Thank you, Vice President Pence.
that Judge Amy Coney Barrett will be respected,
Thank you,
treated
Vice President
respectfully,
Pence.
voted and confirmed
Thank
to the
you.
Supreme Court of the United States.
Senator Harris, you're the senator from and former Attorney General of California. So let me ask you a parallel question to the one I posed to the Vice President. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, what would you want California to do? Would you want your home state to enact no restrictions on access to abortion? And you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Thank you, Susan. First of all,
I mean, yeah,
Joe
yeah,
Biden
I mean,
and I are both people of faith, and it's insulting
when you're
to
dealing
suggest.
with
that we would knock
abortion
anyone
issue.
for their faith.
I think
And
that's
in fact,
a personal
Joe,
issue.
if elected, will be only the second
But
practicing
no, it's
Catholic
hard nowadays to
as
raise
president
a
of the United
kid.
States.
You know,
On the issue of
want
this,
to be
of this
as
nomination, Joe and I are very
devoted
clear, as are the
possible
majority of the American
to
people.
the child.
We are 27
if you're
days
young,
before the decision about who will be the
if you're
next president of the United
famous,
States. And, you know, before,
I mean,
when this conversation has come up, you know, it's been about
because
election
when you
year or
really look
election
at the
time.
whole issue of
We're literally
having
in
a
an
baby,
election.
if you're getting
Over
real,
4
you can't
million
get
people
real.
have voted. People are in the
become
process of voting
impregnated.
right now. And so Joe has
Okay, you
been
have to
very
be
clear,
with
as
the
American
partner.
people
You
are.
have to
Let the American
have
people fill that seat in the
sex
White House, and
in
then
a
we'll fill
constant
that
manner.
seat on the
Just
United
don't,
States Supreme Court. And to your point, Susan,
with this thing
the
here,
issues
I mean,
before us couldn't be
that
more serious.
prolonged
There's the issue of choice,
contact
and
with
I will
somebody,
always fight for a woman's right to make a
female,
decision about her own
to-
body.
to
It should
get
be
her
her decision
pregnant.
and
So
not that of Donald
rape
Trump
shouldn't even-
and the
they
Vice
shouldn't
President,
even
Michael Pence.
talk about
But let's
rape.
also look at what else is before the
and
court.
then
It's the Affordable Care
becoming
Act.
pregnant.
Like, literally in the midst of a public health pandemic, when over 210,000 people have died and 7 million people probably have what will be in the future considered
she
a
getting tired. She
pre-existing
needs to
condition
stand up a
because
little bit.
you contracted
He
the
probably
virus.
feeling the same way
Donald
too.
Trump is in court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And I said it before, and it bears repeating. This means that there will be no more protections if they win for people with pre-existing conditions. This means that over 20 million people will lose your coverage. It means that if you're under the age of 26, you can't stay on your parents' coverage anymore. And here's the thing. The contrast couldn't be more clear. They're trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Joe Biden is saying, let's expand coverage. Let's give you a choice of a public option or private coverage. Let's bring down premiums.
Senator
Let's
Harris.
lower Medicare eligibility to 60.
These
Thank
two
you,
love the
Senator.
explanation. Them
You
no,
know,
no.
You
What they
mentioned
call media bite.
earlier, Vice President Pence, that the president was committed to maintaining protections for people with pre-existing conditions. But you do have this court case
Definitely a
that you are
farm on
supporting, your
fear.
administration supporting, that would strike down the Affordable Care Act. The president says, President Trump says that he's going to protect people with pre-existing conditions, but he has not explained how he would do that. And that was one of the toughest nuts to crack when they were passing the Affordable Care Act. So tell us specifically, how would your administration protect Americans with pre-existing conditions to have access to affordable insurance if the Affordable Care Act is struck down?
Well, thank you, Susan. But let me just say, addressing your very first question,
This one is going over the course. So we go.
I couldn't be more proud to serve as vice president to a president who stands without apology for the sanctity of human life. I'm pro-life. I don't apologize for it. And this is another one of those cases where there's such a dramatic contrast. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris support taxpayer funding of abortion all the way up to the moment of birth. Late-term abortion. They want to increase funding to Planned Parenthood of America. Now, for our part, I would never presume how Judge Amy Coney Barrett would rule on the Supreme Court of the United States, but we'll continue to stand strong for the right to life. When you speak about the Supreme Court, though, I think the American people really deserve an answer, Senator Harris. Are you and Joe Biden going to pack the court if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed? I mean, there have been 29 vacancies on the Supreme Court during presidential election years, from George Washington to Barack Obama. Presidents have nominated in all 29 cases. But your party is actually openly advocating adding seats to the Supreme Court, which has had 9 seats for 150 years, if you don't get your way. This is a classic case of if you can't win by the rules, you're going to change the rules. Now, you've refused to answer the question. Joe Biden has refused to answer the question. So I think the American people would really like to know, if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed at the Supreme Court of the United States, are you and Joe Biden, if somehow you win this election, going to pack the Supreme Court to get your way?
I'm so glad we went through a little history lesson. Let's do that a little more. In 1864...
Well, I'd like you to answer the question.
No, Mr.
Yes,
Vice President, I'm
please.
speaking. I'm speaking. Okay. In 1864, one of the, I think, political heroes, certainly of the president, I assume if you also, Mr. Vice President, is Abraham Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
Abraham Lincoln was up for re-election. And it was 27 days before the election. And a seat became open on the United States Supreme Court. Abraham Lincoln's party was in charge not only of the White House, but the Senate. But Honest Abe said it's not the right thing to do. The American people deserve to make the decision about who will be the next president of the United States. And then that person can select who will serve for a lifetime on the highest court of our land. And so Joe and I are very clear. The American people are voting right now, and it should be their decision about who will serve on this most important body for a lifetime.
Thank you,
And
Senator
the
Harris.
people, Susan, are voting right now. They'd like to know if you and Joe Biden are going to pack the Supreme Court if you don't get your way in this nomination.
Let's talk about packing.
You once
Come on,
again gave a non-answer. Joe Biden gave a non-answer.
Trying to answer you
The
now.
American people deserve a straight answer. And if you haven't figured it out yet, the straight answer is they are going to pack the Supreme Court if they somehow win this election. Men and
Mr.
women,
Vice President,
I got to
I
tell you,
think
people across this country, if you cherish our Supreme Court, if you cherish the separation of powers, you need to reject the Biden-Harris ticket. Come November the 3rd, re-elect President Donald Trump, and we'll stand by that separation of powers in a 9-seat Supreme Court.
Yeah, let's talk about packing the court then. Let's talk about the fact. Yeah, I'm about to. So the Trump-Pence administration has been, because I sit on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Susan, as you mentioned, and I've witnessed the appointments for lifetime appointments to the federal courts, district courts, courts of appeal. People who are purely ideological, people who have been reviewed by legal professional organizations and found to have been not competent, are substandard. And do you know that of the 50 people who President Trump appointed to the Court of Appeals for lifetime appointments, not one is black? This is what they've been doing. You want to talk about packing a court? Let's have that discussion.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Senator. Let's go on and talk about the issue of racial justice.
I just want the record to reflect she never answered the question. So maybe the next debate, Joe Biden will answer the question, but I think the American people know the answer.
Thank you, Vice President. In March, Breonna Taylor, a 26-year-old emergency room technician in Louisville, was shot and killed after police officers executing a search warrant in a narcotics investigation broke into her apartment. The police said they identified themselves. Taylor's boyfriend said he didn't hear them do that. He used a gun registered to him to fire a shot, which wounded an officer. The officers then fired more than 20 rounds into the apartment. They say they were acting in self-defense. None of them have been indicted in connection with her death. Senator Harris, in the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes.
I don't believe so. And I've talked with Breonna's mother, Tamika Palmer, and her family. And her family deserves justice. She was a beautiful young woman. She had as her life goal to become a nurse, and she wanted to become an EMT to first learn what's going on out on the street so she could then become a nurse and save lives. And her life was taken unjustifiably and tragically and violently. And it brings me to, the 8 minutes and 46 seconds that America witnessed, during which an American man was tortured and killed under the knee of an armed, uniformed police officer. And people around our country of every race, of every age, of every gender, perfect strangers to each other, marched shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm, fighting for us to finally achieve that ideal of equal justice under law. And I was a part of those peaceful protests. And I believe strongly that, first of all, we are never going to condone violence, but we always must fight for the values that we hold dear, including the fight to achieve our ideals. And that's why Joe Biden and I have said on this subject, look, and I'm a former career prosecutor. I know what I'm talking about. Bad cops are bad for good cops. We need reform of our policing in America and our criminal justice system, which is why Joe and I will immediately ban chokeholds and carotid holds, George Floyd would be alive today if we did that. We will require a national registry for police officers who break the law. We will, on the issue of criminal justice reform, get rid of private prisons and cash bail, and we will decriminalize marijuana, and we will expunge the records of those who have been convicted of marijuana. This is a time for leadership on a tragic issue of unarmed black people in America.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Vice President Pence, let me pose the same question to you. In the case of Breonna Taylor, was justice done? You have 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
Yeah.
Well, our heart breaks for the loss of any innocent American life. And the family of Breonna Taylor has our sympathies. But I trust our justice system, a grand jury that refused the evidence. And it really is remarkable that as a former prosecutor, you would assume that an impaneled grand jury looking at all the evidence got it wrong. But you're entitled to your opinion, Senator. I think, look, and with regard to George Floyd, there's no excuse for what happened to George Floyd. Justice will be served. But there's also no excuse for the rioting and looting that followed. I mean, it really is astonishing. Flora Westbrook is with us here tonight in Salt Lake City. Just a few weeks ago, I stood at what used to be her salon. Was burned to the ground by rioters and looters. And Flora is still trying to put her life back together. And I must tell you, this presumption that you hear consistently from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that America is systemically racist, and that, as Joe Biden said, that he believes that law enforcement has an implicit bias against minorities, is a great insult to the men and women who serve in law enforcement. And I want everyone to know, who puts on the uniform of law enforcement every day, that President Trump and I stand with you. And it is remarkable that when Senator Tim Scott tried to pass a police reform bill, brought together a group of Republicans and Democrats, Senator Harris, you got up and walked out of the room. And then you filibustered Senator Tim Scott's bill on the Senate floor that would have provided new accountability, new resources. But we don't have to choose between supporting law enforcement, improving public safety, and supporting our African American neighbors and all of our minorities. Under President Trump's leadership, we'll always stand with law enforcement, and we'll do what we've done from day one, and that is improve the lives of African Americans.
Thank you, Vice President.
Record unemployment, record investments in education, and we'll fight for school choice for all of our members.
Thank you, Vice President.
I'd like to respond.
Senator Harris.
I will not sit here and be lectured by the Vice President on what it means to enforce the laws of our country. I am the only one on this stage who was personally prosecuted everything from child sexual assault to homicide. I'm the only one on this stage who has prosecuted the big banks for taking advantage of America's homeowners. I'm the only one on this stage who prosecuted for-profit colleges for taking advantage of our veterans.
Colleges.
And the reality of this is that we are talking about an election in 27 days, where last week the President of the United States took a debate stage in front of 70 million Americans and refused to condemn white supremacists.
Not true.
And
Not true.
It wasn't like he didn't have a chance. He didn't do it, and then he doubled down. And then he said, when pressed, stand back, stand by. And this is a part of a pattern of Donald Trump's. He called Mexicans rapists and criminals. He instituted as his first act a Muslim ban. He, on the issue of Charlottesville, where people were peacefully protesting the need for racial justice, where a young woman was killed, and on the other side there were neo-Nazis carrying tiki torches, shouting racial epithets, anti-Semitic slurs. And Donald Trump, when asked about it, said there were fine people on both sides. This is who we have as the President of the United States. In America, you deserve better. Joe Biden will be a president who brings our country together
Senator Harris,
and recognizes the beauty in our diversity and the fact that we
Senator
all
Harris,
have
thank
so
you.
much more in common than what separates us.
Vice President Pence, let me give you a minute to respond.
Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that very much. You know, I think this is one of the things that makes people dislike the media
Look like
so
these
much.
two are being decent into
Is that you selectively edit, just like Senator Harris did.
a big outrage.
Comments that President Trump and I and others on our side of the aisle make. I mean, Senator Harris conveniently omitted after the president made comments about people on either side of the debate over monuments.
Yeah, to find it out.
He condemned the KKK, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists, and has done so repeatedly.
Your stuff.
You're concerned that he doesn't condemn neo-Nazis.
Yeah.
President Trump has Jewish grandchildren.
No, what that is.
His daughter and son-in-law are Jewish. This is a president who respects and cherishes all of the American people. But you talk about having personally prosecuted. I'm glad you brought up your record, Senator.
Thank you.
But I really need to make this point. When you were DA in San Francisco, when you left office, African Americans were 19 times more likely to be prosecuted for minor drug offenses than whites and Hispanics. When you were Attorney General of California, you increased the disproportionate incarceration of blacks in California. You did nothing on criminal justice reform in California. You didn't lift a finger to pass the First Step Act on Capitol Hill. I mean, the reality is your record speaks for itself. President Trump and I have fought for criminal justice reform.
Thank you, Vice President.
For educational choice and opportunities for African Americans, all of our
Thank you, sir.
And we'll do it for free.
Thank you. You know, there is no more important issue than the final issue
We'll get the audio version.
and that is the issue of the election itself.
Susan, he attacked my record. I would like an opportunity to respond.
Let me give you 30 seconds because we're running out of time.
I appreciate that.
Out of one day.
First of all, having served as the Attorney General of the state of California, the work that I did is a model of what our nation needs to do, and we will be able to do under a Joe Biden presidency. Our agenda includes what this administration has failed to do. It will be about not only instituting a ban on chokeholds and private holds, not only, I would like to go through.
These are points that you made earlier in the hour, and I want to talk about the election itself before we have to.
But I want to talk about the connection between what Joe and I will do and my record, which includes I was the first statewide officer to institute a requirement that my agents would wear body cameras and keep them on full time. We were the first to initiate a requirement that there would be a training for law enforcement on implicit bias because, yes, Joe Biden and I recognize that implicit bias does exist, Mr. Vice President, contrary to what you may believe. We did the work of instituting reforms that were about investing in reentry. This is the work that we have done and the work we will do going forward. And again, I will not be lectured by the Vice President
it's a reaction
on
video
our record of what we have done in terms of law enforcement and keeping our communities safe and a commitment to reforming the criminal justice system of America.
Thank you, Senator Harris. I'd like to pose I'd like you to respond first to the question on our final topic, the election itself. President Trump has several times refused to commit himself to a peaceful transfer of power after the election. If your ticket wins and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power, what steps would you and Vice President Biden then take? What would happen next? You have 2 minutes.
So I'll tell you, Joe and I are, I think, particularly proud of the coalition that we've built around our campaign. We probably have one of the broadest coalitions of folks that you've ever seen in a presidential race. Of course, we have the support of Democrats, but also independents and Republicans. In fact, 7 members of President George W. Bush's cabinet are supporting our ticket. We have the support of Colin Powell, Cindy McCain, John Kasich, over 500 generals, retired generals, and former national security experts and advisors are supporting our campaign. And I believe they are doing that because they know that Joe Biden has a deep, deep-seated commitment to fight for our democracy and to fight for the integrity of our democracy and to bring integrity back to the White House. And so we believe in the American people. We believe in our democracy. And here's what I'd like to say to everybody. vote. Please vote. Vote early. Come up with a plan to vote. Go to iwillvote.com. You can also go to joebiden.com. We have it within our power in these next 27 days to make the decision about what will be the course of our country for the next 4 years. And it is within our power, and if we use our vote and we use our voice, we will win. And we will not let anyone subvert our democracy with what Donald Trump has been doing, as he did on the debate stage last week, when again in front of 70 million people, he openly attempted to suppress the vote.
That's all I want. The voting
Joe
age
Biden,
people.
on the other hand, on that same debate stage, because clearly Donald Trump doesn't think he can run on a record because it's a failed record, Joe Biden on that stage said, hey, just please vote. So I'll repeat what Joe said. Please vote.
Thank you, Senator. Vice President Pence, President Trump has several times refused to commit himself to a peaceful transfer of power after the election. If Vice President Biden is declared the winner and President Trump refuses to accept a peaceful transfer of power, what would be your role and responsibility as Vice President? What would you personally do? You have 2 minutes.
Well, Susan, first and foremost, I think we're going to win this election. Because while Joe Biden and Kamala Harris rattle off a long litany, the establishment in Washington, D.C., an establishment that Joe Biden's been a part of for 47 years, President Donald Trump has launched a movement of everyday Americans from every walk of life. And I have every confidence that those same Americans that delivered that historic victory in 2016, they see this president's record where we rebuild our military, we revived our economy through tax cuts and rolling back regulation, fighting for fair trade, unleashing American energy. We appointed conservatives to our federal courts at every level. And we stood with the men and women of law enforcement.
Some Walmart shopping excursion
has only grown stronger in the last 4 years.
Most of the
stores when you talk about accepting the outcome of the election, I must tell you, Senator, your party has spent the last 3.5 years trying to overturn the results of the last election. It's amazing. When Joe Biden was Vice President of the United States, the FBI actually spied on President Trump and my campaign.
I think this is one of them.
I mean, there were documents released this week that the CIA actually made a referral
election that
to the
FBI vice president actually running.
Those allegations were coming from the Hillary Clinton campaign, and of course, we've all seen the avalanche.
Serving a term. I'm sure love politics.
For the
Joe Biden, boy, I've been there for a long time.
Until it was found that there was no obstruction, no collusion, case closed.
Need a career.
And then Senator Harris, you and your colleagues in the Congress tried to impeach the President of the United States over a phone call. And now Hillary Clinton has actually said to Joe Biden that in her words, under no circumstances should he concede the election. Let me just say, I think we're going to win this election. President Trump and I are fighting every day in courthouses to prevent Joe Biden and Kamala Harris from changing the rules.
Should we give it to them?
This universal mail-in voting that will create a massive opportunity for voter fraud. We have a free and fair election. We know we're going to have confidence in it.
But none of them are not perspective because Joe Biden been in the politics forever.
You know, I've written all the questions that I've asked tonight.
Look a second,
for the final question of the debate.
The same thing with Ms. Harris. Ms. Harris has been there for a long time.
Someone else wrote. The Utah Debate Commission asked students in the
more fresh eyes should stay
to write essays about what they would like to ask. And I want to close tonight's debate with a question posed by Brecklin Brown. She's an 8th grader at Springville Junior High in Springville, Utah. And here's what she wrote, quote, "When I watch the news, all I see is arguing between Democrats and Republicans. When I watch the news, all I see is citizen fighting against citizen. When I watch the news, all I see are two candidates from opposing parties trying to tear each other down. If our leaders can't get along, how are the citizens supposed to get along?" And then she added, "Your examples could make all the difference to bring us together," end quote. So to each of you in turn, I'd like you to take 1 minute and respond to Brecklin. Vice President Pence, you have 1 minute.
Brecklin, it's a wonderful question. And let me just commend you for taking an interest in public life. I started following the news when I was very young. And in America, we believe in a free and open exchange of debate. And we celebrate that. And it's how we've created literally the freest and most prosperous nation in the history of the world. I would tell you that don't assume that what you're seeing on your local news networks is synonymous with the American people. You know, I look at the relationship between Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the late justice who we just lost from the Supreme Court, and the late Justice Antonin Scalia. They were on polar opposites on the Supreme Court of the United States, one very liberal, one very conservative. But what's been learned since her passing was the two of them and their families were the very closest of friends. I mean, here in America, we can disagree. We can debate vigorously, as Senator Harris and I have on this stage tonight. But when the debate is over, we come together as Americans. And that's what people do in big cities and small towns all across this country. So I just want to encourage you, Brecklin. I want to tell you that we're going to work every day to have government as good as our people. And the American people each and every day love a good debate. We love a good argument. But we always come together and are always there for one another.
Thank you.
In times of need. And we've especially learned that
Thank you,
through
Mr.
the
Vice President.
difficulties of this year.
Senator Harris, what would you say to Brecklin?
First of all, I love hearing from our young leaders. And when I hear her words, when I hear your words, Brecklin, I know our future is bright because it is that perspective on who we are and who we should be. That is a sign of leadership.
She's the whole of the institution in the background.
Joe Biden, one of the reasons that Joe decided to run for president is after Charlottesville, which we talked about earlier. It so troubled him and upset him like it did all of us, that there was that kind of hate and division. What propelled Joe to run for president was to see that over the course of the last 4 years, what Brecklin described has been happening. Joe has a long-standing reputation of working across the aisle and working in a bipartisan way. And that's what he's going to do as president. Joe Biden has a history of lifting people up and fighting for their dignity. You mean you have to know Joe's story to know that Joe has known pain, he has known suffering, and he has known love. And so, Brecklin, when you think about the future, I do believe the future is bright. And it will be because of your leadership, and it will be because we fight for each person's voice through their vote, and we get engaged in this election because you have the ability through your work and through eventually your vote
Thank you,
to
Senator
determine
Harris.
the future of our country and what its leadership looks like.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Thank you, Vice President Pence. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We want to thank also the University of Utah for its hospitality, and most of all, our thanks to all the Americans who watched this debate tonight. Again, our best wishes for a quick recovery to President Trump, the First Lady, and everyone who is battling COVID-19. The second presidential debate is next week on October 15th, a town hall-style debate in Miami. We hope you'll join us
them
then.
coming to the Magic City. They're going to get a wider perspective. So, I'll see you around. Yeah, photo up. gonna start march out. Yeah, I get look coverage from these people, so